Hi, this is Junaid, Neurological Stroke and Epilepsy. Today we're going to have a special guest, Dr. Osama Jamil. He goes by OJ. If that's okay with you, how would you like me to actually address you? OJ is fine. I love it. Perfect. Hey, so here's the thing. I told you, I always believe in constant learning and continuous learning, and I want to bring people who are actually those exact people. Osama is actually a neurologist, a vascular neurologist here in Texas, top of his field. I love him because of his medical excellence. But more importantly, he has learned himself what is blockchain, NFT, the new cryptocurrency and all that. My interest is a little different. I mean, he is actually deep into finance itself, which basically means decentralized finance. But I want to basically get his advice and on how this relates to the new digital health revolution and moving forward. There was recently an article from Science how NFTs could transform health information exchange as well, which we shared and talked about before as well. So we're going to go ahead and start a conversation. OJ is going to basically spearhead the whole conversation. I'm going to basically learn from him and hopefully ask intelligent questions along the way. So go ahead, OJ. First, introduce yourself, where you are, and then we can go from
Thank you for having me, Junaid. Yes, it's fun to have these sort of discussions about futuristic things that are coming, which might not be so futuristic in the next 5 to 10 years as these new technologies get integrated into all of our lives without us actually knowing about it. So again, as you mentioned, I'm a neurologist and a vascular neurologist. I'm currently in South Texas right now, and I'm a stroke director at a primary stroke center. So this topic is very interesting to me. But before I think we start, the couple of important definitions so that everybody has a baseline on what we're going to talk about. Otherwise, people can get confused if they don't have the basic knowledge. So before I start for NFTs, the important thing is, we need to have a couple of definitions. So the first one is a ledger. So basically, a ledger in cryptocurrency is basically a record of digital transactions. And what a blockchain means is that it's a decentralized digital ledger, which is verifiable on the blockchain. A blockchain is run by multiple computers, and when a certain transaction happens, it has to be verified by all the computers or most of the computers on the network. And once those computers agree, then that transaction is verified, and that cannot be changed. It's permanent. It's what we call immutable. It cannot be reversed, basically. And that's the beauty of the blockchain, because it's for the most part it's public, and anybody can go on it and query the blockchain and get a whole list of transactions and whole history behind that. So again, the topic that
awesome. So just to so ledger is basically like if I'm running a business, I have a profit and loss statement, I have a complete ledger that these are the places that I've put in, got the money from, and this is where I'm going from. That's considered a ledger, a list of transactions. The difference between a regular ledger, like a private company that I'm doing, as compared to a public ledger, is basically that how you have the problem of trust. How do you solve the problem of trust? How will it be verified? Because people can come in and change entries on a public, like a Google Docs, and you can just change entries on a Google Sheets. What blockchain does is that it infuses the biggest problem in anything, and that is trust. How do you actually able to trust that thing? So fantastic. I love it. Before I go, I just want to make sure one comment that OJ made was very, very important, that it suddenly creeps up on you and be part of your lives while you don't know about it. This is what we call exponential explosive technologies, which are suddenly here. It's like the Kodak moment, right? Nobody really realized who's going to use a non-digital photography like Kodak. No one, right? Suddenly came upon and moved on. And nobody is actually looking at non-digital photography. That's what he is alluding to. And that is how technology of this, finance with underlying technology as a blockchain, is going to change the way we do everything. Go ahead, OJ. So number one was blockchain, number two, a ledger,
so
and
number three. I think the important thing is, as a topic is non-fungible tokens. So before we dive into what non-fungible tokens are, we have a little bit, two more definitions are kind of important. So what is non-fungible and what is fungible? So both are economic terms. Fungible means that an asset that you have is exactly identical to another asset. For example, $1 is exactly similar to another US dollar. One Bitcoin is exactly similar to another Bitcoin. So that is fungible. Okay. So non-fungible means that one of a kind, unique, basically. So for example, your 1990s Toyota Camry specific license plate, that's your fungible car. That's a non-fungible. That's because it's your car. It has a unique number plate that's assigned to you. That's non-fungible. So when we transition that same concept onto the blockchain, we get the concept of non-fungible tokens. Non-fungible token means a digital asset that is verifiable on the blockchain, meaning that this digital asset will be one of a kind. It will have a specific signature, and it will have only one public holder, and anybody can verify that it belongs to that public holder. There's a person who either made it or sold it, and there's a person who either bought it and subsequently bought it, and all those transactions can be tracked to give that verifiable identity. As an example, for example, we have the Mona Lisa, right? So like in a physical world, there's only one, there are many copies, but there's only one Mona Lisa in the Louvre in France, okay? So similarly, like this technology, the NFT technology, has allowed us to produce unique digital ownership, which was not possible before in the era of internet.
Correct. I mean, everything that we live in the digital world is a Control-C, Control-V, copy-paste away. What you're saying is that it solves the second biggest problem. The first biggest problem was this trust, and the second biggest problem is ownership. Like, who really is defined ownership in a mass copyable market? I mean, it's very different in terms of Mona Lisa. I mean, brushstrokes can be taken, and forgeries can be caught by that. But if it's a digital, I mean, copy-paste, how do you even know who really owns it? But you're saying that NFT can actually produce an ownership, a level of security for the author or purchaser, and also, there's a ledger of transferability of ownership that can be viewed. So that's great. Now, and I heard something about smart contracts into it. So do you mind explaining what smart contracts are?
So basically, smart contracts are basically programming languages where you you write a program. If X equal to Y, then the program, certain things can be executed. And so there are multiple variations of that, but on the baseline is it's a program that's runs by itself. So once it's created, a specific set of conditions have to be met before the program is executed. And NFTs, in a basic sense, are smart contracts, basically. So.
Correct. And then that's what I actually was personally also looking into, that there are smart contracts that are built in that every time, for example, my authorship is sold and resold, I get a 5% commission, which was, again, never possible, right? I sell something once, that is the owner, and then move on. But that's true because over time, things can increase in value. And the author that actually initially or the creator who did whatever he did or she did, actually never gets to see the returns on their initial sort of investment. And I think these smart contracts, which can be only possible in a digital world, also creates another level of opportunity, which we have not seen before. So that's great. So we have basically, and that comes to the concept of programmable currency. So, for example, if you have a place where you have issued coffee, and that coffee is coming from Ecuador versus Brazil versus X, there is a clear difference of where it was sourced from, where the ingredients are. So you can also go through that chain of command and see where the ingredients are until you actually comes on your box. So that's also very possible with blockchain to ledger up all the way there. You can also have smart contracts built in that if, for example, it is coming from Ecuador, it's 40 cents per pound, but if it's coming from Portuguese, it's 60 cents per pound, etc. So not only that, you can actually have a lot more automation, programmability gone into that smart contracts that actually executes and therefore decreases the overall, decreases the latency of how we do business. So the businesses are actually investing in this blockchain technology for two reasons. One, there's a huge demand for sustainability, for understanding where my ingredients are sourced from in terms of food, products, etc. And then secondly, that this can actually improve their business efficiency significantly, because think about it. I mean, coming from Ecuador to United States, how many pieces of paper are going to be needed? It's ridiculous. So all that can be moved out in terms of programmable smart contracts turning into programmable currency. And this way you can actually turn those dollars into Portuguese money or Ecuadorian money and then go from there. So this is actually what we're seeing. The reason that I bring this up and the reason that's important is I think this is going to be the way forward for digital health technologies in terms of sharing health exchange. So what do you think, in your opinion, OJ, the best, what are the different areas in which blockchain, NFT, ledger, all these terms are going to be applied in the new digital health era?
I think in the new digital health era, the way I think about it is there are going to be three aspects of the blockchain that are going to be important. One is the patient aspect, one is the hospitals themselves, and one is the supply chain. So starting from the supply chain, going on to your thing about coffee, where you scan a barcode and it's verifiable on blockchain where your coffee comes from. Similarly, for healthcare, what I'm envisioning is that in terms of authenticity of medications, because counterfeit medications are a big issue. Making sure that the product is coming from wherever the manufacturer is saying the product is coming from. I think that's very important. There's several blockchain solutions that are working on that. One of them is called VeChain, and which actually initially started it as to prevent from counterfeit goods, because there's a lot of market for counterfeit goods, and a lot of people get scammed because they think they're buying a Louis Vuitton bag when it's not actually Louis Vuitton bag. What the blockchain technology will allow us to do is that it can verify that this is an actual bag, and each step of the blockchain would be verifiable. Similarly, I think the same thing is going to be important from a supply chain standpoint in the hospital, like the equipment, the authenticity of the medications, for example. And that might not be a big deal in the United States, but in our country, like in Pakistan or other developing nations, where there's a lot of problem in counterfeit medications, the blockchain technology will go a long way in reassuring consumers that the medications they're taking, or the hospital, the medication that is purchasing, or the equipment they're purchasing is the right equipment, or the right medication has gone through the right checks, and something that's like verifiable for everybody, not just like the company, like, or the hospital says, not just the company or the hospital, but everybody can verify, hey, this is what the barcode is. I can look it up. I can query the blockchain, and I can see, hey, this is the real thing. I think the second.
Awesome. So you said you here. Go ahead. Let me just a little bit of interject. So first of all, so over here in the United States, also we have a huge issue of what we call recalls. Like Toyota recalled 1 million cars. There are toys that are constantly recalled. There are also medicines that are being recalled, and there are also food that is being recalled. Look, accidents do happen. Industrial accidents are nothing new. For here, I think in the United States and richer countries, one of the biggest benefits of this barcoding would be that every time that comes in, automatically it scans within your house, and that household actually has a record of what got into it. And especially nowadays when I'm actually ordering groceries online anyways, and somebody is scanning them and they know exactly which house they're going into, it can be automatically inventoried. And the minute there is a recall, my daughter is not eating a cereal that she's supposed not to be eating. So there are definitely very important, applications of blockchain here in the United States or richer countries. I agree 100% that we do unfortunately face in resource limited countries a bigger issue of counterfeit drugs. I mean, as a matter of fact, they say that 30%. That counterfeit doesn't mean that it's basically salt in it. It basically means that if the actual branding of the medication will be different than the actual packaging. So not only, just the medication itself is fake, it's actually, sometimes it's just not that potency, not that milligrams, not that, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the things that we actually have to look at in terms of, again, the biggest issue that it solves is trust. And that trust can actually be verified at the very source. And the minute you're able to do that, you can hold someone accountable too. I mean, I don't think this is going to change counterfeiting, but how it's going to change is basically that the minute you're able to find the thief, right? That's the biggest issue. We can keep talking about the lock, but the minute until and unless we take account into the thief itself, then we won't be able to do that. So this actually solves that very important issue. So I think you're saying that the one of the biggest things that is going to happen is in the supply chain issues of healthcare, like any other business, and it's going to improve efficiency, decrease latency, and improve trust and validation of different kinds of products. Now let's move to the second, hospital or patient, whatever you want to take.
I would say that it will also give the consumers more power to verify whatever medications they are getting, whatever services they are getting, to get them verified. And so, as I said, more knowledge is power, and so it will at least give the consumers a choice, I would say, and more knowledge. The second.
Dude, don't say that. I'm getting pharma companies to sponsor this video. I'm just messing with you. You're right. I mean, believe it or not, I mean, if you can get a medication that is costing $300 in the United States, you can scan it, and there's an app that can verify that, oh, by the way, from a Canadian pharmacy is $3, and by the way, from Vietnamese pharmacies is 30 cents. Then at least you know what you're getting into, if nothing else, right? I mean, now you have actually consumer power, and especially with high prices here in the US, this is going to democratize. That's all the D's that I talked about, in digital, right? Demonetization, democratization, decentralization, disruptive, sort of all these things can happen if we actually constantly do that.
And then I think the second I think the issue comes in respect to the patients, and I think that's where we're heading this conversation towards. So I think non-fungible tokens, more specifically or broadly, decentralized identity solutions basically are kind of really important in a sense that it will give patients more power of their healthcare data. The issue that I foresee is that how do we ensure privacy and HIPAA compliance if the patient data is to be integrated onto the blockchain. Now, there are certain blockchains that are working on this, and not all blockchains are public. There are private versions of blockchains as well, private blockchains, private public blockchains. So I think that is going to be the biggest issue. But what I see right now is that it will give patients, it's the first time that patients will have control of their own data, and they can choose to share the data. If somebody's querying, for example, if a pharma company is querying the blockchain, they can have this choice of, in a de-identified manner, whether they want to share the data or not, basically. Whereas right now, that's not the case. Right now, we the data is available, through, all entities, and, it can be patients' data used to generate, patient-specific, like, for example, insurance profiles, how high risk is the patient. Whereas I envision a world where the patients will have that choice, basically, on how much data to share, and in a de-identified way.
Oh, that's actually very good. So first you commented about digital ID. So just to give my viewers a little bit of background. So 21 states have already signed up on Apple Digital ID. So your state IDs in the United States are going to be on your phones, your driver's license and your IDs in 21 states. First, I think is coming up is, I believe, Arizona. So there's digitalization everywhere. Now, the point is that this digitalization of identification is somehow also a big privacy concerns, because now everything can be tied to your digital identity. I mean, we know what the Facebook debacle happened and how it is, being used for quote unquote, very good stuff. So I'm not going to get into the politics of it. What I'm saying is that clearly this whole digitalization of identity itself is happening, and it comes with consequences. Now, the second step, he's saying that how to digitally have the digital ID store information in blockchain and then do two things with it. Number one is de-identification. So you can de-identify that particular piece of your information so that the data is useful, but it is not directly linked back to you. And as he suggested that, and insurance companies can get back to you, especially if there's genetic information on it. they might actually, increase your insurance prices, or more
Which is happening
importantly,
right
if
now.
they can't do it for you, they keep it in the data
Which is
bank.
happening right now, actually, as well.
It is actually happening right now. And yeah. And more importantly, that I think the bigger issue is that they're going to have it forever. So they know what my daughter's risk profile is even before she's born, or my son's risk profile is before she's born. So this is a bigger concern, in my opinion. I mean, I understand that we're living in a transformational age. By the time we get to these laws and everything, we will have to, sort of suffer through it, and we will get those laws right. I mean, we have seen that over the history. But unfortunately, I think when you have this sort of situation where they cannot even know where they got the data from, as I'm saying, because, clearly I have a risk, my daughter will have same genes, or my son will have same genes, that would be an issue. The second thing he recognized about digital identity disinformation is the last thing is actually control. So what is called is information control, that how you can regain a little bit of control over your information. Do you want to expand on that, OJ, more a little bit?
So, for example, right now there's a big push to have QR codes. You go there, scan. For example, if you want to go into a restaurant, you have to scan your QR code. So in the future, something like that is going to be happening, and that's going to be kind of very consistent and considered normal. It's actually normal in some countries. But the issue is that, for example, you scan your QR code, that QR code has all your health data, if you're hypertensive, diabetics, and you should have that ability to, say yes or no to whether that information gets shared. Because if you're, for example, you're going into a restaurant, you don't want to have them pull up all your health data, or even the government itself. You should have that power of data. And I think that's where Web3 in itself, which includes blockchain, is so important, where it is now empowering the people who use the system, who have a stake in the system, to have a say over the system. Whereas our current situation, it doesn't allow that sort of stakeholder activism, you would say. So I think that's going to be very important. I think that's going to be the most challenging part, that how do we maintain a balance between, having enough data so that we help everybody, but, at the same time maintain individual privacy. And I think that's a delicate balancing act that, we will have to play. I mean, there will be countries where they will be like, no, everything is going to go public. It's going to be public ledger. But, obviously, in Western countries, privacy is a very big, is a very strong consideration. And so I think we are going to see the more push towards this sort of balance in the Western countries.
No, I absolutely agree. Look, I came from a big family, from a humble beginning. I mean, we were 6 brothers and sisters in a 2-bedroom apartment, right? I mean, there was no such thing as privacy. I mean, when people talk about it, even my daughter here in the United States, I feel like, what the hell is she talking about? I mean, there are difference in, cultural, values, and there's of course a difference in where people are coming from their background. I mean, Chinese, people talk about, well, China government is doing all that. But if you talk to Chinese people, they said, I don't care. They love it. They said, it is making my life easier, useful. I don't care who gets my data. And that's it. That's a cultural thing, as I said, because for me itself, if somebody takes it, yeah, so what? I'm freely sharing my data with Apple and Google. So you're right. I mean, there are ways that, that there needs to be settled within an individual locale basis, which comes to the same thing, control. In general, is that as long as people have control, as long as people have the ability to choose, I think that's the best way to actually approach it. And then there's a value exchange, right? If you're going to give me your data, then I'm going to give you valued services, right? I mean, Google can give me, personalized results. I love it. I don't care if it takes my data. Happy to give it to you, because I love those personalized recommendations, because it makes my life easier. Similarly, if I'm going to give your data to, let's say, a research trial, gladly, right? I was part of the Apple study of atrial fibrillation as well on the Apple Watch. Take it. I don't mind. But I mean, if there's a possibility, if I get in return some money too, I would appreciate it. And this is what it actually does. This quantifies my individual contribution at a very individual level. And that quantification that was not possible before tokenization, Now it is possible with the tokenization, coinification, etc., that can actually be reimbursable potentially. Not that I'm proposing it. I still believe that, that we have to look at healthcare a little bit, at least in terms of altruistic, because research and all this is for public good generally. So I think at that point in time, it is important to realize that. But I think also, at least we can actually look at different ways that we already do, like how to sponsor different things, how to provide grants for different, at least, make sure that publications are done by physicians who are actually invested in it and has shown true, engagement in their patients to get data. So all those things, when you have quantification, there are different ways to actually incentivize, not just by money. So I agree 100% that quantification will lead to different incentives down the future. So that was supply chain. Now we went to patient. Now let's come to hospital systems.
I think for hospital systems, and this includes like inpatient and outpatient. I think it's the way I think NFTs or the digital tokenization is going to be important is again tracking expenses, tracking things within the hospital, getting data that's kind of verifiable, so and that's data that's immutable. So meaning that like for example, if a hospital is under financial duress, they can try to cook their numbers, but if everything is on the blockchain and everything's being scanned and everything is basically you have all the digital data that's available in an immutable format, that's going to be great. The inefficiencies in the system, I think, would be better picked up like that because the data is more transparent. In a sense that I think and it will also, I think it will help, with the outpatient, especially with the outpatient physicians, they can work with their patients to give them incentives, basically, even though they do it right now, but they will have more quantifiable data. So just because a patient says that they run 3 miles a day doesn't mean they actually run. So if they have a verifiable thing that, hey, they ran 6 miles this week or walked 6 miles, the hospital or the healthcare system or their doctor will give them a digital token or give them a digital coupon for, another health related activity. That's the way I'm thinking about it. So one is more transparency in hospital costs, more transparency in how the hospital is run, more transparency on profit and loss, or profit and loss, and then it's the last thing is how to encourage better healthcare behaviors by patients, by incentivizing their behavior.
No, so. And that would bring to my actually, I think one of the biggest things, anytime you can quantify that was previously not quantifiable, anything, right? I mean, for example, not every day that we have devices that can quantify my sleep, my wake up cycle, my sleep cycle, my number of breaths, my deepness of breaths, my physical activity. For God's sakes, we can actually measure sexual activity right now, right? So we are actually living in a different times in terms of quantification of things. What I see that is that the minute you have quantification of things, more and more value-based engagements can happen. More and more incentives can be driven towards outcomes rather than all the other bullshit that we are paying $1 trillion of waste in here in the United States. I agree. This will open up doors. And I agree 100%, especially in the inpatient side, which is actually acute care represents about 25% of all expenditure here in the United States, which is extremely more than any other country in the world. And more importantly, we are having, as we know, we're both physicians. Okay, this is a bullshit admission, right? We all say that. But, at the end of the day, we can see that quantifiable valuation, value chain, etc., that can actually move forward in a way that we can do this. One last thing, again, I think is that I was wondering, and I don't know, OJ, what you thought about it. Is just your opinion. Do you think that gamification as an engagement tool through tokenization is going to be important as well? Because Apple Watch has a close the ring, or Fitbit has another thing, or that challenge, that points, earning points, that sort of activity of being able to do that. once I'm able to measure it, actually makes me more engaged, makes me more motivated to do things. Do you think that will be like a behavioral change engine in your opinion?
That's a great question, Junaid. I think definitely it will play a role, and I think we are partly already in the gamification era. Like when you talk about Apple Watch, you talk about Garmin Watch, like, I have a Strava app, like, if I, for example, run like 7 days a week, I get a badge and you get more motivated. Okay, I have to run 7 more days or 10 more days. Similarly for exercise. So I think, and I think like having that, verifiable on the blockchain, I think that gives you that badge that you have is your own badge. So for example, if the service shuts down tomorrow, if your token is on the Ethereum blockchain, you can just migrate it to another, other service provider who provides the similar services. So I think it allows you to be truly own your data. I think that's the most important thing. It allows you to truly own your data, and the gamification is only going to be a part of it, but it's definitely, I think it's going to be it's going to be double motivating. First of all, you get motivated because you're gamifying, but then the rewards you get are, you actually own those rewards, not like Strava or any other fitness company. And you own those rewards, they'll be in your own wallet. You can display them, wherever. And I think that's going to be the next step, I think. And we're seeing that in a lot of a new genre of gaming called play to earn games, which are coming out slowly over this next 1 to 2 years, where right now the way the games work is whatever they earn the game, like Fortnite, whatever the skins they own, they don't actually own them. The company can revoke that. For example, if they violate terms of service, the company can just block them. But with the new games that are coming out, even if the company blocks you from playing, if you've earned a certain asset, if it's a blockchain asset, you own the asset. You can go sell it to somebody else. You can, it will be your own asset. So I think those things are the future. And I think the future is much more closer, I think, than we think, and I think the next 5 to 10 years are going to be transformational.
Oh, yeah. The future is faster than you think. Peter Daniels wrote that book. One of the videos I discussed it. Those are the 5 Ds that I keep talking about: disruptive, demonetization, dematerialization. All these is definitely in an exponential age we are living in. Hey, OJ, thank you so much. We're going to see a lot more of OJ on here. We're going to discuss some stroke topics, neuro ICU, and some interesting topics like this. He brought up the conversation on Web 3.0, and we'll talk about that in the next session. Like, what does Web 3.0 means, metaverse means, what does that have to do with neurology, etc., and what are the fundamental technologies like blockchain that are going to build it up. So stay tuned for that. I'm very grateful, OJ. Before you go, you have to tell me 3 things about yourself that I don't know. You have to tell me 3 things to read, and then you are okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, 3 books to read. I think my favorite, one of my favorite books is David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell. It's kind of like a revisionist history.
Love it.
Yeah, so it's very good. The other one that I kind of like is Anthem by Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand is a classical libertarian, and she kind of escaped Soviet Russia. So she has a very unique perspective in her novels. I think bring out her own experience in Soviet Russia, and for me, she's one of my kind of authors that I kind of look forward to reading. And then The Big Fat Surprise by Nina Teicholz, where she tries to have a counter argument against how fat got demonized in our society. And we can have a discussion. We can have probably another podcast just on fat. Maybe we can have Dr. Tipu Sadiq on there as well. So we can have one on both sides of
that. We're gonna get some more people to get in that too. Absolutely. So number 1, so the first recommendation, David and Goliath. Actually, the corollary book that I would recommend is The Unfair Advantage by Hassan Kuba, who actually won the Best Business Book Award last year in UK, a good friend of mine. And I agree 100% that this is fantastic. I have to look at the Anthem, by the way. I have to sort of research that and then put it on my reading list. 3 things we should know about you, OJ.
I'm a technology aficionado.
Anything.
Very curious and maybe a news junkie,
Brilliant.
I would say. So that's why I keep sending you all those WhatsApp messages.
Well, stay tuned again. We're going to be back soon with OJ and different people who are actually on a learning curve in an exponential age. We don't know everything, but we are not shy about admitting it that we don't know stuff. And we are constantly ever so learning of professionals. See you next time. Thanks. If you save a life, it is as if you saved the life of mankind. Please make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel and my newsletter. If you want to get in touch with me, the best way is to go through Twitter or via LinkedIn. Also, make sure you follow the Academy website for regular updates. Thank you so much.